Take a deep breath and breathe and relax. My context was we're currently working on a dialogue project, and we'd had a meeting in the School of Education before, and then we were working with my dialogue project. We're from two different cultures, and I think my culture is very much being originally born in England, and Scotland is very much home for me now. Both cultures are very much a reserved culture. It's a culture that we only really reflect ourselves on how we only really reflect ourselves in writing or in the arts. That's, I think, our real challenge for expression. And the other culture I'm working with is the person is living in America, and that's very much an open culture, a culture that is the person I'm working with often asks me how I feel, and we're really having a lot of tension within the dialogue, how the dialogue process was working, and then the dialogue partners working with had to talk to Partick. So I made a decision actually that day, instead of just getting the tube from Calvin Bridge to work to Partick with them. So we just had more of a conversation as we walked, and then we realised that the actual dialogue that we're working on was, that I really stepped outside the process, and we suddenly realised that, and I'm realising working on the psychology was, and it's been very much transformative thinking in the fact that as we've been working on the psychology, as we've been working on the psychology, and as we've been working on the process of it, it was like a fly on the wall for me as we stepped out. We both realised that, that the whole process of doing the dialogue was enabling us to have that conversation. And I think as adult practitioners, as we come in to do that in adult learning, we need to have an exchange of dialogue, and I think that's very much what Habermas talks about in his theory. And that from the very much the Frankfurt School, that this whole idea of being able to talk about dialogue, and our dialogue that we're talking about is, does labels affect adult learners? And we're talking a lot about neurological traits, and the whole idea of diversity and building diversity into education. But I'm finding an interesting challenge in the fact that I've come from a very much understanding of that, and having challenges myself within the neurological area. I was finding a lot of tensions in the fact that I'm trying to express myself within that, and how do I dialogue that. And I think for me it was transformative in the fact that I've tried to realise as I've been talking to that, but I'm not also talking to the person. We're talking from two different cultures. So for example, they're coming from a open culture, and they can openly express how they feel, and I can constantly ask this question from them: how am I feeling? And not just about the dialogue, but how I'm feeling about the process. And as we keep checking back, as having meetings, we're working online, we're also having meetings to meet up, and I almost ask the question about how I'm feeling. And I think we've got to attention that we're concerning about the present dialogue, which was Friday, but we had a global extension next week, and it was quite a lot of tension, and almost felt to me in the fact that I was finding that they're working a very different way. And it's been a real transformative process for me, not just the culture, but also seeing a different way of working, and then also explaining to them about different ways of different miles, different styles. But I think in the whole story for us, as we started to realise in the whole process of dialogue, I think it opens up diversity within the classroom and gives us more of a framework. And that was interesting listening to the lectures today in psychology, was that we haven't had much work done on that. How do we facilitate more inclusivity and diversity within the classroom? And I think that only happens when we actually talk about a dialogue and a conversation, and that conversation opens up to more dialogue. But we need to be able to give room for that. And for me, it might sound kind of simple, but it's just been the whole process of dialogue that I found transformative. That as you're able to build trust, and as you're able to have projects that like this, it's transformative to be able to not just to listen to yourself. And I'm kind of thinking about also when I did my first degree, we realised for ourselves is we were talking about our creative work afterwards. It was transformative for us because we were talking about our work as creativity people, but for me that at the time was external because it was what we were creating, we were talking about. And recently has it become more retrospective in the fact that as you're talking about yourself and your own wiring and as you're wired as a person, because what we're really talking about as well is historically they've said that there's one particular norm that is the normal person. That is what we would say normally a person is wired, and that's their brain. And I would argue that it's a cultural construct that there's no normal person, and to build diversity within adult learning, we need to realise that everybody's wired differently, and that's building a responsive educational system. And it was interesting that we were talking about in this lecture today that our learning plans need to be responsive to what's happening, and that happens in dialogue. That dialogue it becomes responsive, and how we become responsive in the whole process. So it's interesting how the whole idea of transformative learning comes into this, because we're transformed by dialogue, we're transformed by listening to one another, and it's the whole process of being able to talk and be open one another. And it's also that framework of trust, because we need to have that architecture of trust within dialogue. Okay. So I think we're on to
well, what stands out for me? I think that the cultural aspect you were mentioning, because where I am from, I think we're quite reserved as well. Or maybe, I'm not sure about that, but maybe that's only my family. So we're not really used to talking about, and I'm still, to be honest, I'm still not very comfortable doing that. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure. I can relate. I have the same experience, but I do believe that dialogue, apart from the feelings or disclosing, I don't know, personal information, you learn more when you compare your thoughts to someone else's, because exactly we're shaped by our culture, so you don't really realize that what you've been thinking all this time it's structured by how you've been brought up in this particular environment. So when you go and talk to some other person, see how they are feeling about a certain matter, then you get a broader image. Let's say you get to be more inquisitive about your own self, I suppose. Yeah, so I can relate a bit, but no, not entirely. Yeah.
Yeah, so because I lost the start of what you said, so you can relate.
Well, I understand how dialogue can be transformative.
Yeah.
Even if it's only on intellectual, matter, only on theory or on opinion on politics or whatever, in that aspect. It's not. It hasn't. Maybe it hasn't had the same impact on me as it had on you. Because, as I said, maybe my family or generally my culture, certainly in the university, we didn't have dialogues. It was just lectures, just sit there 2 hours, get this, go home, and so it's very helpful sharing your experiences in the classroom. You can relate it to theory. You can, as I said before, you can reconsider what you've been thinking up to this point. That's one. I think that's the best I've got from the uni so far, maybe.
Yeah, because you're from a Greek culture, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Greek. Yeah, I don't know about other people, but I'm not very used to sharing my opinion. At least not with many people. I've been thinking about. I was thinking about it yesterday that maybe you do not like talking to many people, not to people generally.
Yeah.
But just a crowd.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable doing that. Maybe this is because it's probably the way I've been brought up. Probably.
Yeah.
What I've been used to. I mean, in school we didn't do that.
Yeah.
We just asked questions by the teacher. We responded. That's it. So yeah, I'm not used to doing that. The first time I came to England, it was 4 years ago. I stayed for a few months, and I was at the university, and they were doing group work in the class, discussions, so on and so forth. That was a whole new world back then. I wasn't familiar with that system of teaching method at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I can really reflect on that because, being from born in England and living in Scotland as well, and Scotland is very much home. Both cultures are very much that we don't talk about. We don't have much dialogue, and I think one of the things that I think I've found really coming to this particular master's program is challenge you to start to have that dialogue and have that discussion. And I think one of the other things that it's been an internal kind of retrospective for me as I re-engage with adult learning. I had that in my thinking and I had that kind of dialogue, but to be able to start to express that and then work within psychology, I think particularly within this psychology, it's very much living psychology that we've come to. When I learned psychology many years ago, it's very much lab-based and very much sterile experiments. You learn about Milgram's experiment, and it would be experiments that would say that of social psychology, which interests me. But it was social psychology within a lab base. It was like a person would deliver semi-electric shocks because they were told by this person in a coat. But did that psychology really work? They did some experiments on the street, but it was all very much controlled experiments. And now seeing group work that we're doing in psychology in practice within groups, and they're having to work in groups, and they come out of it, start working in groups. I've been used to doing group working when I was at theological college, and that helped. I had to push myself out to do that, and then push myself out to do public speaking, and I kind of started that process when I was for the last 2 years. I had to start coming out to myself to actually physically talk about the subject, but it was more about the practice of the subject. And then for us to come into this psychology course, it's very much been a retrospective, personal journey. The fact that you're having to then use psychology in practice, and we're having to work for one another. So I think we're kind of being forced for that. And when we're dealing with adult issues in education, we're having to have those dialogue and discussions, we're having to prepare what we think, and then we're prepared for the discussions and arguments. And that's been very much refreshingly new to me, because we've had to then think about what we actually believe within those debates, and then come in and deliver stuff. And I said, when I read Hammond Bessie's stuff over the Frankfurt School, and he said that language was enclosed within culture, and the whole idea of that we needed to have this dialogue to give us a journey towards the utopian of education. That really spoke to me and encouraged me, the fact that it gives us this building a diverse community as we realise the differences in the different cultures, because I think that's the dynamic that we come to. It's not just, it's the challenge we have as diversity and actual wiring, but it's also, I think, as we're faced with different cultures, it enables us to have more of a conversation to diversity, because it's within that framework of the two different things almost coming together, almost sharpening one another as we're working with that. I think that's what's so amazing about University of Glasgow, is the fact that we're so many different cultures in one room. We're getting this whole global perspective. So we're coming to stage 5. Yeah, 50 minutes.
Okay.
So just quickly, I think just wrap up, because we're in 15 minutes. So reflect on your chair. I think we've done that, and then afterwards, no, I think we're about.
I think we're the last one.
Yeah. I think we've done.
As far as the multicultural thing is concerned, I agree. I mean, it's very, very interesting because where I live in a student accommodation. So all of my flatmates are from different parts of the world. Indian, one is Brazilian, the other from Nigeria, and the last one is from Switzerland. And you can, you can see the difference in culture, and it's very, very, I don't know. I find it exciting, to be honest. It lets you see the world from different angles sometimes. I bought a basil the other day, a pot of basil. You know what basil is? No? It's a plant, anyway.
Basil.
Basil.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Basil, yeah.
Basil.
Yeah.
So, right, I wanted for cooking. Anyway, I bought the pot, I put it in the kitchen, and it was, I don't know, like 8-ish, 9 at night, and the Indian girl came in. She liked it very much. She told me that it's related to the religion, like in India. So it's, and I was like, she went close, she smelled it. I was like, touch it. If you touch it, you get out more of more smell. And she's like, no, we don't touch it in India when at night because we think that they're sleeping, so we don't want to disturb them. And we would never do that in Greece. We would touch it, no matter what the time was. So you get to see how they respect nature. I don't know. That was amazing.
Yeah.
So you get a totally new perspective for things.
Yeah.
Even from a small thing, right?
Yeah.
From the pot of basil, which I know now how to pronounce. See, another cultural thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely get different perspectives because I found that working with you, knowing you from Greece, because I've learned Canonian in Greece, but I've never been like biblical old Asian Greece. I've never been to Greece, and then actually hearing your perspective about living in Greece, it was refreshing to hear that because it's like, the challenges you have living in Greece, and it's like hearing about Greece from a direct perspective, and hearing the living part of it because I've been locked in the Asian side of Greece, and then just hearing the living side of Greece and hearing the challenges of that, and you telling me about the historic parts and where you actually live and the different things about the issues that you face within the educational thing, and being that that was very great perspective for me.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah, that's it, I suppose.